Welcome, everyone. Cannabis News with Joe Klare is October 26th, 2018. Presented, as always, by the Marijuana Times. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. A bunch of great articles. Click the video tab to find this show, social media links, and more. marijuanatimes.org. Today, we got stories out of New York, North Dakota, and Illinois. All of that coming up. First, of course, Cannabis News is brought to you by NatureSide, nature-side.com. Side is, of course, spelled C-I-D-E. Check out the organic, all-natural pesticides. Grow safe and poison-free. Don't use harmful chemicals. Don't use banned pesticides in the state that you're growing in. Check out NatureSide, nature-side.com, a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. They're awesome for that reason and many more. Go check them out. This first story is by Julia Granowitz over at marijuanatimes.org. New York bill to require public health insurance to cover medical cannabis. Specifically, the bill will require Medicaid, Child Health Plus, workers' compensation, and the essential plan to cover medical marijuana treatments, so the patients no longer have to pay out of pocket for doctor's visits and their medicine. A memo attached to the legislation reads, quote, in part, quote, cost the primary barrier to patient access in New York's medical marijuana program. Medicaid, other public health plans, and commercial health insurance plans do not cover medical marijuana, forcing patients to pay out of pocket. Some patients begin treatment only to stop due to inability to pay, while others turn to the black market. It was introduced by Assemblyman Richard Gottfried and 17 co-sponsors. Very interesting, as Julia points out, what's going on in New York, the speed with which things have progressed there toward the discussion or through the discussion of recreational legalization, toward expanding the medical marijuana program. A lot of factors factored into that, of course, one being Cynthia Nixon's primary run, failed primary run against the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, pushing him much farther towards the being favorable towards marijuana law reform than he was before she announced her candidacy, and went after him quite vocally. And like I said, her ultimately she failed in her campaign. But at least one thing she did was to push Governor Cuomo much more in the camp of supporters of marijuana law reform. Now to North Dakota. This is from MarijuanaMoment.net. North Dakota marijuana legalization measure is winning in the latest poll. Measure 3, which will legalize cannabis for adults 21 and over in one of the country's most conservative states. Of course, Trump won North Dakota by over 30 points. We have no possession limits. It's ahead among likely voters by a margin of 51% to 36%. According to a survey released earlier this week. And as Chris Roberts points out later in this article, there's been other surveys, other polls rather, one showing the measure losing 59 to 30. It's really, and even this poll is 13% undecided. So what's going to happen in North Dakota on November 6th is really anyone's guess. As I said, by all rights, a conservative rule state that Trump won by over 30 points, recreational legalization shouldn't be even a thought there, or at least it should be the beginning of the discussion, as it is in many other states that fit that description, like Kentucky and Indiana. But medical marijuana passed in North Dakota, which it has not come close to in Kentucky or Indiana. And, now there are surveys, there are polls showing that it could possibly win in North Dakota on November 6th. It's really interesting. And again, as I said, no possession limits, a really lenient, unrestrictive measure when compared to other measures, especially that have passed in states where recreational marijuana is now legal. But again, North Dakota is one of those states where on November 6th, whatever you hear out of North Dakota, you really shouldn't be surprised because there's no way to get a handle on what's going on there. The opposition, as is pointed out in the article, is outspending proponents of legalization quite a bit, but apparently, according to this poll, is not making that much of a difference, and we'll see. Even for me to sit here and predict what's going to happen, like a state like Michigan, I can confidently predict that I think recreational legalization is going to pass in Michigan for many reasons I've gone to on this show. All the polls have been strong, some of them up in the 60% or over 60%, but for North Dakota, I wouldn't even venture a guess. So I won't. So I'll move on to Illinois. State legislators make the case for legalizing, regulating recreational marijuana during a Des Plaines town hall. Sponsors of a bill that would make recreational marijuana legal in Illinois for adults over age 21 are planning to reintroduce a revised draft of the proposed law when the General Assembly's next regular session begins in January, according to two legislators who were at the previously mentioned town hall before a crowd of about 60 adults and Maine West High School students. State Senators Heather Steens and State Rep Kelly Cassidy, are both Democrats from Chicago, spoke about the proposed Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act during an October 17th town hall style meeting. Steens said prohibition just plain doesn't work. The bill, which they would introduce in January, as I said, would allow Illinois residents to purchase and possess up to 28 grams of marijuana from a designated dispensary and cultivate up to 5 of their own marijuana plants per household, according to the legislators. Now, they point out the obvious reasons for legalization. Cassidy said, "The guy in my corner doesn't card. He doesn't label his product, and it's not in a childproof container. Bringing this out of the street and into the regulated market will make us all safer." Some people had a problem with that. Terry Collins, excuse me. Again, as I've said before on this show, sometimes I get under the weather. Today is one of those days. As you can tell, is affecting my voice, which is my instrument, my tool of greatness. It's my voice. It's failing me, but I soldier on. The tough life of a video podcast host. It's got a lot going on here. It's rough, man. It's rough. Terry Collins, Executive Director of the Maine Community Youth Association Foundation, which works to prevent drug and alcohol use among teens in Maine Township, said, quote, "We have to have a lot more studies done before we can let it go out to the public." What does that mean? That stems from the mindset that legalization is going to bring about marijuana use, as if marijuana use isn't already prevalent. Any study you see, any data you see, shows at least 10% of the adult population regularly uses cannabis. That includes in Chicago, and Illinois, and North Dakota, and Kentucky, and everywhere. It's higher in some states, it's lower in other states, whatever. It's a lot of people. Somewhere at least more than 30 million people in this country use cannabis regularly. We have to have a lot more studies done before we can let it go out to the public. She's talking about marijuana, I guess. As if the government is hoarding all the marijuana. And they've done some studies, but they need to do more studies before they can release all of this marijuana. You can't reason with people who have this kind of mindset. This totally illogical, false mindset that right now, under prohibition, the kids are protected. You know, there's no marijuana out there. The roads are stoned driver, quote unquote, free. There's no problems. But once it's legal, well then, you know, the government opens the big doors to the big marijuana hanger and everybody comes and gets some. It's ridiculous. All of it's ridiculous. The notion that prohibition is protecting anyone, if they indeed need to be protected from cannabis, and that legalization is just, well, it's just going to unleash the marijuana. We've contained the marijuana. The marijuana monster is strapped down in a secure government area. But once legalization happens, well, then the monster escapes, and then we're all doomed. We're all doomed when legalization brings the marijuana monster for us, crushes us all, and destroys our children's lives, and leads to hard drug use and lung cancer and brain cells dying by the trillions, all because of legalization. Does that sound ridiculous? Of course it does, because it is ridiculous. But this is what these people think. We can't let it go out to the public. You're talking about marijuana. We can't let marijuana go out to the public. What? I've said all I can say about that. I can't relate to that. I can't relate to that because I know differently. I know that the public has already heard about marijuana, and a lot of them are pretty happy with it. It's the word on the street. Marijuana, a lot of people like it and use it for various reasons. I don't know, man. I know it sounds crazy, but there it is. We bring you the news here on Cannabis News. Thank you, everybody, for helping us spread the truth about cannabis, liking, sharing, commenting on the videos. Check us out at marijuanatimes.org. Click that video tab, of course. Go enjoy your weekend now. Go forth now that you're caught up on Cannabis News. And check us out on YouTube. Search Marijuana Times on YouTube, Vimeo, and Apple Podcasts for the audio-only version of the show. Thank you to all our loyal listeners, new watchers. Whenever you come in, however much you watch, thank you. I'll see you next time right here on Cannabis News.